at 6:26 p.m. And Chris, do we have a flag? Yes. If you'll join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Chris. All right. So in board book, you guys will see that we had a couple of new business items that needed to come to us regarding modular purchases for Waverly and North Albany Elementary Schools. And so I have the first one up there, and I believe Director Buttram and Assistant Superintendent Harlan are going to take this one on.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Everyone should have the memo in front of them describing the challenge that we're here to try to resolve tonight. As usual, we're moving quickly because of the vagaries of the world of construction right now. We're looking forward towards our next school year and trying to identify where we think we're going to have kids coming back in. And in some places, we think we're going to have more kids than we normally would have expected. A lot of that being a result of COVID and the belief that kindergartners have been held back and that we're going to have an exceptionally large kindergarten class next year. So Assistant Superintendent Harlan has looked at the enrollment in that, and we've tried to identify the places where we think there's going to be the greatest need for additional space. And the reason that we had to move this in front of a special board meeting is we reached out to let me back up a step. We tried to find used modulars all over Oregon. Turns out everybody is in the market for modulars all over Oregon. We called the manufacturer of the modulars, and it turns out everybody is calling the manufacturers of the modulars. And so we're all trying to solve this space problem as a group and moving very quickly to do so. David McKay has joined us. He called and was able to find a manufacturer so that if we move quickly, we may be able to get in line and get a modular that could be produced sometime, if we're really lucky and all of the stars align for us, in the first couple of weeks of August. The other wrinkle that we have to pull together on this is the conditional use permits that come out of the city. That's also, if the stars align perfectly right about the same time, we might get lucky and be able to pull this together. So what we're presenting to you tonight is a request to allow us to move forward with the purchase of these modulars in the hopes that we can have these classroom spaces available at the beginning of school. I will be blunt to tell you, I am not optimistic that we will have both of them ready. Just the law of large numbers, I think. But I think if we don't start now, I know we won't. Let me put it that way. And so this is to give us a fighting chance at trying to be ready for the first day of school. This would allow us. Our basic plan is to add a 3 classroom modular at Waverly. And that would be the way we have traditionally used modulars here. It would be pit set, which basically makes it not quite an addition to the school, but essentially a real building for planning purposes. And we would build it in place that way. And we would make it as a wet modular, meaning that it would have restrooms and toilets, faucets, all of those sorts of things, because we don't believe the city would allow us to do it any other way anyway.
Is that one similar to the one that went in at Lafayette?
Yes, Lafayette and Periwinkle.
And Periwinkle?
Yes.
Okay.
And
that's what I thought.
And Clover Ridge.
That was a perfect segue. Thank you, David. In an earlier draft of this plan, and I'm honestly not sure how far back it went, one of the plans was to actually move the modular units that are at Clover Ridge and move them to Waverly in an effort to save money. The challenge with that, and staff, we do not make that recommendation tonight, is because every square foot of learning space that we have, we are going to need in this district. We're moving things around and looking for spaces right now. Tearing down a perfectly good building at Clover Ridge to move it and then fill in that pit and do all of the hole filling work that's associated with that, in a lot of ways is destroying value that currently exists. So you would save cash out of pocket right now by doing that, but I think you would come up short in terms of value for it. And we're going to need all of the spaces that we have at some point or another. And that's why we've circled back and recommended the purchase of a new modular unit for installation here.
And Clover Ridge is a place where those modulars will be used or be able to be used?
Clover Ridge already has the modulars. We had at one point planned to relocate the Clover modulars to Waverly.
But they're not in use currently?
Not right at this moment, no.
But we have that will be a place that they could use them.
Yes.
Okay.
It's also a place where, as Assistant Superintendent Harlan and I were discussing, if this doesn't come together exactly at the timeline that we're looking for, it's also the place that we would temporarily relocate some of the Waverly programs to while we finish this work up in the fall.
Okay.
If I could add just a couple of details, this is the kindergarten 5th grade bubble is exacerbated unintentionally as well by our desire to lower class size in K1. So when you lower class size, what do? You increase classrooms as well. So if you want 17 or 18 in kinder, you have to add additional classes. This is coming at the exact same time that we believe will have the biggest class in our system that we've seen in 15 years enter kindergarten. And so when you put those 3 factors all together, likely Fir Grove and Clover Ridge will have to be used for spaces where we have programs that are currently in our schools. So we currently have programs for young kids through LB or other programs that are housed in schools that will likely have to be moved out to be able to use those classroom spaces. And those programs will likely have to be moved out to Clover Ridge and Fir Grove. Fir Grove also might have to be used for kindergarten. And so all of those factors, we will be tight on space. I think in every single one of our elementary schools, there will have to be programs that move. The only exception that I can think of is Tangent.
So then continuing on and summarizing, the plan at North Albany is slightly different. Again, same basic thing. We need to buy it now so we can get it here. We still have the same conditional use permit challenges in North Albany, but in this case, we would recommend a two classroom dry modular that we would put in place on posts rather than pit set, and we would skirt it and put the external ramps on it. And this would be a building that we would genuinely consider to be temporary and movable, so that as we, this isn't going to be the last time we have this problem where we're trying to solve what could be a short-term bubble in enrollment and things like that. So this would be a modular unit that we would have some reasonable ability to move. It's not like moving a trailer house, but we would have a reasonable ability to move it with conditional use permits. In both of these cases, we are recommending using ESSER funds in order to make these purchases. Modulars to reduce class sizes related to COVID is actually the example that they use of capital investments that are allowed through ESSER funds. So that's a fairly straightforward thing for us to do. The prices for each of them, I apologize, my computer is scrolling. The Waverly option right now, our budget, the amount we would ask the board to approve is a not to exceed amount of $1,006,000. So $1 million plus 6,000. That's a hard thing to say out loud. And the not to exceed amount for North Albany Elementary School is $515,650. As always, we would of course try to keep these prices as low as possible. We're still exploring the idea of insourcing some of the work, but these are the not to exceed numbers that allow us the flexibility we need to have any kind of fighting chance of having these in place in the fall. Like Waverly, where the overflow plan or the delayed start plan would be Clover Ridge. At North Albany Elementary, if we're not able to have this up and running, or if the board were not to approve this, as Assistant Superintendent Harlan said, the alternate option would be to use Fir Grove.
Where at North Albany are you planning to put this one?
This would go to the west of the two classroom modulars we have in that field that is towards North Albany Middle School. It's the only place we can put it because we believe we have wetlands to the east where that, and so we're not going to be able to put it there. So that's the logical place to put it.
That was my question, because I know when we did permitting stuff or checked on things before, there was a lot of the wetland issue up there.
Right.
So, okay.
Right. Yeah, when we moved the two classrooms from Oak Grove at the start of the Oak Grove project, yes, we went through all of that. Right.
Yeah. Okay. Director Roach, go ahead.
My first question was going to be where that footprint at North Albany Elementary is tiny. So I'm glad it's a two classroom modular instead of the big one. Several years ago, when you built the Periwinkle modulars, my wife and I were living near there and would walk the dog all the time. It felt like it took forever to build it. Were there things that were extending the length of building that? I mean, I guess I'm concerned about timing for such a major. It looks like a building, you know, it looks like part of the school. It sounds like we have a plan for what to do in case of that, but was the periwinkle, did that one take longer, or is that pretty much standard for the length of time that it takes?
Well, that was a 6 classroom building, so a little bit more extensive, but it does take time to do it this way. It will not take as long as periwinkle, but it's not going to be in and done in 2 weeks. I'm still working on the schedule, so I don't have a duration yet, but hopefully we'll have something in the next couple of weeks that we can share.
And this is something I do want to be very careful about the timeline. And I wrote that in the memo, but it's worth calling out now. I think we've got a pretty good handle on the financial piece and the not to exceed numbers, but the timeline here is really fuzzy because we're at the mercy of a lot of factors that we don't control, and we can't really get too far ahead of ourselves. And so it will be a struggle.
But a bigger struggle if we do nothing. So yeah. Director Aganaga, go ahead.
So these are manufactured homes, not to be confused with prefab like we did at Lafayette. Correct?
No, Eric, these are exactly like we used at Lafayette. And I like to call them factory built components. They come in, they're trucked in 12 or 14 by 28 or 14 by 32 boxes that are then craned in and put together, and then the roof trusses go across it. So I don't like to describe them as mobile homes, but they are truly a modular or factory built box that is brought in and then assembled on site.
No, I like the one at Lafayette. I mean, you can kind of tell it's different when you walk in there because of the false floor, but it's a lot better than a manufactured, come in on wheels.
Right.
Still kind of hesitant. That's just me.
I will say this, I don't know if it, construction costs with lumber, we're pushing north of $600 a square foot. And this allows us to be able to build a quality building that I believe will last 50 years. I'm hoping to be able to come back and see it in 50 years, especially with the upgrades that we make to it for the GAP standards. So I believe these are long-term facilities, maybe not quite like a stick built, but will last, and the money and the district will get its full life out of it.
I think it's always just unfortunate. It feels like sometimes when we do all this work on these brand new buildings and we've made all this extra space and then it's full already. I mean, which we knew was coming potentially, but yeah, it would, all of us would love to have the buildings hold more students than having to put modulars out. But I don't think anybody anticipated having that big of a change in a kindergarten group by any means.
And I would say the more, and we always hear from the public about class size as a concern.
Yeah.
The board and the public need to remember that when you lower class size, you increase the number of classes and staff you need. Mm-hmm. Having class sizes of 17, 18, and 19 mean you need more classrooms and more teachers. That's how you do that. And that's certainly a factor here.
Yeah.
Certainly,
I think I agree is more important to have a couple modulars go in and have our class sizes be lower and more reasonable. So
I think it's important for the board to be aware, and you may have discussed this as I had to step away for a moment, but that the state has only at this time identified modulars as the solution in this situation. We are asking around stick-built options from their funding and whether they might be able to support that. So we certainly have some of our buildings where we have the space and the design to add a wing. And our intention is not to put a modular in those spaces. And it's important for the community to be aware of that.
Great.
The other thing I was going to offer to the board is adding square footage. You're never going to really be wrong with it. And if we're going to have this kind of problem, having it at a time where ESSER money arrives that is available to help to solve it is fortunate. This, if we had this problem at any other time, we wouldn't have this solution available to us.
So with that said, are we better to look at more?
I'm not sure that we could get more.
I'm not either. This is
For this,
like I said,
for the start of this, for the start of the 21-22 school year, we couldn't get more, but we could be planning for the 22-23 school year and be working on a plan that does give us enough runway to be able to get through the process in preparation for 22-23.
While those funds are still available. Yeah. Okay. Are there any other board member questions or comments at this point? I believe we have in board book, maybe. Yeah, an action request. So if someone wants to make a motion, now is the time.
I move to approve the purchase and installation of modular classrooms at Waverly Elementary School as described by staff in the amount not to exceed $1,006,000 from ESSER grant funds.
So we have a motion on the table to approve the purchase of installation of modular classrooms at Waverly Elementary School as described by staff in an amount not to exceed $1,006,000 sourced from ESSER grant funds. Director Ward.
Aye.
Vice Chair Thompson.
Aye.
Director Aganaga.
Aye.
Director Roach.
Aye.
I also vote aye. That passes unanimously. And then we have one more for North Albany.
Hey, I'll do it again. I move to approve the purchase and installation of modular classrooms at North Albany Elementary School as described by staff in an amount not to exceed $515,560 sourced from ESSER grant funds.
We have a motion on the table to approve the purchase and installation of modular classrooms at North Albany Elementary School as described by staff in an amount not to exceed $515,560 sourced from ESSER grant funds. Director Ward.
Aye.
Director or Vice Chair Thompson.
Aye.
Director Aganaga
Aye.
and Director Roach.
Aye.
I also vote aye. That one also passes unanimously. Go forth and do good, Russ. David.
Thank you.
All right. With that, really quick, Melissa, can I give you a call before the next meeting? Really fast? Okay. And we are going to adjourn our special board meeting at 6:45 p.m. and we will see you all at 7 at our budget meeting. Thank you.